Jordan's put it in the chat, but just a little reminder that today's session is being recorded. So if you don't want to appear on camera, then it's probably a good time to switch it off just now. But we do like to see your smiley faces on screen. So we're more than happy for you to keep your camera on. So yeah, welcome again, everyone, to the webinar for an introduction to the NextGen Higher National. So my name's Emma Campos, and I just recently joined the NextGen core team as one of their new product development managers. Some of you may know me because I have been involved with ETPs in the past quite recently with the Quality Network Week. So some of you may know me, but if not, well, it's lovely to meet everyone. Today is going to be a shared affair. It won't just be me who you'll be listening to. So I'm lucky that there were no short straws drawn in this team. We do share things around. So today with us are Valerie Innes, who is the head of service for NextGen project. We've got Julie Parker and Jane Anderson, Grant Woolard and Grant Anderson, just to confuse things a little bit, who are the other new product development managers. We've also got with us Liam Campbell, who's one of the program managers at SQA, and Rachel Baird, who's one of our project officers. Jordan, can I just ask you to move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So we are very aware that as employers and training providers, you, from a qualification point of view, you mainly deliver vocational qualifications, SVQs. So we do appreciate that some of today's content may not be required by your centre, and that's why we've decided to split today's webinar into two parts. So the first part will give you an overview of the project, the current and future work streams that are underway, and then we'll stop for a short recess, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, to give time for those of you who feel that that's enough information for you for the time being. Then you can leave at that point. And then we'll continue with the second part of the webinar, which will provide you with more in-depth information of the NextGen project. Now, we are hoping that this is not going to be just us giving out information. We really want to try and make it as interactive as possible. So we would be really interested in hearing your thoughts and any reflections you may have on the NextGen project and how the changes to the higher national qualifications may impact your sector. So feel free to either pop something in the chat. We will have a time for questions and answers at the end, but if you would rather just pop it in the chat during the session, then that's fine. We'll put that up as well. So before I pass over to Val, what is the vision of NextGen? Jordan, could you go into the next slide, please? Thanks. So what we're trying to do with the next generation of higher national quals is we want to deliver dynamic and flexible qualifications so that our learners can develop all those skills, all those you've heard of it before, the 21st century skills, all those meta skills that are really going to make them succeed in industry, and they're going to meet society needs, industry needs, and they're going to be equipped to be able to thrive in the fast changing and complex world that we live in, and may I say, after the last 18 months, also unpredictable world that we're all going to have to live in. So that is really the main aim of the NextGen project. And now I'll just pass over to Val, who'll take you through the next few slides.
Thank you very much, Emma. And next slide, please, Jordan. I'm Val Innes, and as Emma said, I'm the head of service for Next Generation Qualifications and Standards, and it's lovely to see you all with us today. So I wanted to provide a brief overview, and I'm saying brief because my colleagues on the call know that I can chat about and do chat about NextGen HN for hours if I am left to my own devices. So it is going to be a brief overview and a bit of an explanation about our project and our ways of working. The last slide that you saw with our vision statement is perhaps reinforced by the subsequent slides. So we're adapting our HN qualifications, and the impetus for that is very much learner focused. We are making sure that those that are going through our training centres, our colleges, etc., leave really equipped to thrive, not just to survive, but to thrive in our current 21st century workplace. We've stressed that our new qualifications should be adaptable and flexible. They need to support lifelong learning and multiple career options. They need to integrate those as 21st century skills, or meta skills, as we call them, and there will be more information about meta skills in the second part of today's event. And also to develop those critical industry and subject-specific technical skills that are required. Now, why are we doing this now? There have been a lot of changes recently, but actually the NextGen HN project itself was initiated prior to the pandemic. A lot of research, consultation, etc. went on just prior to the pandemic, and then we have spent the last couple of years really getting our ducks in a row, making sure that our ways of working and our priorities, our project plans, etc., were in place and robust and ready to implement. The way in which we are doing that and that implementation is very much through through a prototyping and pilot delivery cycle. And I'll say a bit more about that in a minute's time. The other thing that I should have stressed earlier, just before I moved on to that, was the fact that HN qualifications are nearly 100 years old. And we've had several iterations, several versions of our HN qualifications throughout that period. So the change itself isn't new to us, but we really recognised that rather than just tinkering around the edges, we wanted to do something that was more substantive, and certainly links back to, you know, those points that we've been reinforcing through the vision statement and through the overview, that is very much about responding to and making sure our students, our graduates, are responsive to the needs of the world that we are currently working in. So the prototyping and pilot delivery cycle came into play because we recognised that we can spend an awful lot of time developing programmes, and a lot of that is great work, but it goes on in the background, and it's only when we test it, when things are delivered for the first time, that we realise where improvements could and should be made. So we are working across quite a rapid cycle where we're spending 1 year on development. We're looking at a minimum viable product and then testing that minimum viable product in real life in our pilot delivery, which is a small group, a select group of colleges or individuals working. I don't want to drill down into too much detail about that just now, but rest assured you'll hear more about that as we go throughout the presentation today. At each point in our prototyping and our pilot delivery, we have evaluation, we have sense checks, we make sure that we are learning those lessons that we need to learn, want to learn, and are checking in constantly throughout the piece. Can you move on to the next slide, please, Jordan? Thank you. The project itself, as you can imagine, is a colossal piece of work. And so far, we've split it across 2 phases of development, imaginatively titled Phase 1 and Phase 2. So Phase 1 consisted of 3 curriculum areas, and we've got a slide highlighting those for you in a minute or two. And Phase 2 expanded on that to include 8 more curriculum areas. And I can see, Sean, that you're asking about health and social care or childhood practice. So rest assured they are in that mix. They are part of that mix in Phase 2. We have opted for 2 different approaches. One are our SQA-led developments, so our large uptake national programmes that you'd expect, and we have also gone with some what we're calling centre-led developments. So we have a blend of development types, a blend of engagement taking place, but rest assured that all of the output from those development years meet that same minimum viable product standard, and are aiming to have the same criteria, the same output, perhaps applied in different ways, but they're all meeting those definitions of a NextGen product. We need to stress again the importance of the research and evaluation that is taking place. So again, just reinforcing that point that although we're doing this development rapidly over a 1-year period, that's not the end. There is evaluation before we release the product into the wild. And there is also ongoing evaluation throughout the year of pilot delivery that takes place. Whilst that pilot delivery is going on, as I mentioned before, it's a limited number of centres that are engaging with that pilot delivery. And it's only when we are satisfied that the product is fit for purpose that we will validate that and let it become our business as usual product. I'm going to stop there. I did promise to be brief, and we'll pass over now to Liam.
Thanks, Val. I'm Liam Campbell, and as Emma said at the start, I'm the Programme Manager here in SQA working on the NextGen project. I'm just going to talk a wee bit about how we come up with the subject list that we have at the moment, and then as you can see on the next slide, Jordan. Yeah, the subject list is there. Obviously, as Val mentioned, this is what the delivery at the moment is prototype qualifications, and we're going to pilot with individual colleges at the moment. And at the very start of this project, we had to decide from the vast existing HN portfolio what subjects we would choose to go forward with. And there's a bit of a mix there, as you can see on the slide, but there was a number of a few different criteria that we used to come up with the areas that we have there for phase 1 and now phase 2 as well, which is kicking off at the moment, or has kicked off in the last wee while. One of the areas that we considered was Scottish Government priority areas that they would like us to work in, like us to develop in growth areas, in growth sectors. The other was looking ourselves at the uptake in some of these qualification areas as they exist at the moment across the sector. And then we also had to consider what capacity we had within SQA as well within some of the subject teams that we have to deliver on some of these areas as well. So these are some of the factors that were considered when we come up with the original phase 1 areas, and then again when we come up with the phase 2 areas. So as Val said as well, we wanted to have a bit of a mix as well. So there is some pretty high uptake subjects there on that list, but we also have some centre-led developments as well, and this was all about looking across different sized qualifications and different sectors to see how well we could test the model, and make sure that we were testing it in different ways, and then gathering the information from the feedback, the evaluation feedback, as Val said as well, so that we can kind of bring that back on an iterative way and allow us to kind of change things as we go, as well as at the end of the process as well. So that was how we come up with the original subject list that we have there that we're working on just now. It doesn't look much there on the page when you see it like that, but as Val said, there is a large project that sits behind this, and yeah, there's a development team for each of these different areas that has been set up with QDTs and writers and people across the sector that are helping us to develop these qualifications with our qualifications managers within SQA as well. So although it doesn't look much on the page there is a lot of work going on in the background to deliver these new qualifications. I'm just going to take a pause there because I think we're just, as Emma mentioned at the start, we're just going to have a wee break to see if MDs want to post any questions before they leave, or you're all welcome to stay as well. So I'll just pause for a second before moving on to the other slides. You can move the slide on, Jordan. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, Jordan. It's very painful trying to have a pause like that with so many people on the screen. So hopefully that left it long enough there. The next two slides I'm not going to go through in lots of detail. Hopefully you can see them okay, but if not, don't worry, because we're going to be sending out a version of these slides to you after today's meeting, and you can have a look at it in a wee bit more detail. But this was just to give you an indication of what we were planning with regards to phases that Val mentioned earlier on. So this first slide is phase 1. So the original subjects that we had were engineering, television, computing and data science, and then looking at how that expands into the year 2 of those developments. When you're moving on to the HNDs, it expands out into some further HNDs with different options as well. I would say that at the time we were planning phase 1, this is what we're aiming to develop, but at the moment we're still in discussions with the computing teams and the engineering teams to see what the exact HND options will be. So don't take this slide as read. This could be subject to change, so I just wanted to kind of caveat what we've got there, but hopefully we'll be taking the majority of this stuff forward, and we can update at a later point if you would like to find out more information on exactly what areas in engineering and computing will be developed from an HND perspective. But that gives you an idea of the different subject levels and how they split and where we see things getting developed in what years. Move on to the next slide, Jordan. Yeah, so this shows phase 2. So this is the areas that Val had mentioned as well, where these are more recently started, so probably from the summer we were planning and talking to the qualification teams about these different qualification areas, and these ones are in development at the moment and planned to complete by next summertime in time for centres piloting next August. So there's a whole different list of subject areas there as well that we picked for phase 2. We went through the same process of selection for phase 1 and phase 2 subjects, and again it gives you an indication of what the timelines are likely to be as well. Part of, or the main part of my job is actually reporting to some of our governance groups and making sure that we're keeping on track and working with all our individual project managers on each of these different bits of work to make sure that we do bring all of this in on time and to the time that we've been talking about, and that we've agreed with our external reference and steering group as well. Okay, I think that's me. I can move on to the next slide, Jordan. And Grant Woolard is going to cover this slide, so I'll hand over to Grant.
Thanks, Liam. Good afternoon. My name's Grant Woolard. I'm one of the new product development managers, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what's different in the current HNCs and Ds to the NextGen HNCs and HNDs. So as you can see, HNCs and HNDs are now discrete standalone qualifications. Both the HNC and the HND are worth 120 credit points at SCQF levels 7 and 8 respectively. So that equates to 15 SQA credits. It is possible for units to sit at various levels, above or below the HNC and HND, but basically both must incorporate 80 SCQF credit points at SCQF level 7 and 8 respectively. So the next generation qualifications will focus on opportunities to develop meta skills throughout the qualifications, and I'm not going to say too much about those because Julie's going to speak to you just about meta skills in the next slide. There will be larger and fewer units, which will mean that there's going to be less assessment for learners and for practitioners. So this is intended so that they can focus just on their own learning and development. And for the next gen qualifications, expect to see structures with more mandatory content. that encourage project work and integration of assessment across units and projects. Graded units are out, qualification grading is in. So grading is now an overall qualification grading. One of the main reasons for this was really that we had evidence to suggest that learners tended to focus more on their graded units from the outset, and spend more time and resource on those graded units. So having grading across the qualification will hopefully remove this issue. Again, I'm not going to talk too much in too much detail about grading because Jane will talk to you more about grading as we go on in the presentation. And just the final 2 bullet points, NextGen HNs will be digital by design. You'll hear a lot of that. And they'll encourage new approaches to quality assurance. So really just on those last 2 points, one of the aims of NextGen design is really to champion the digital by design approach across all the processes from development to delivery to quality assurance. So we'll be looking to work with the pilot centres really for opportunities to implement and evaluate any technologies that we think can enhance the learning and teaching experience. And we'll also be working in partnership with the pilot centres and wider QA networks as well to develop and implement new and improved approaches to quality assurance, which take account of NextGen qualification design and grading approaches. So that's really just a quick overview of what's different in NextGen HN qualifications. And I'll pass you over to Julie Parker, who's going to speak to you now about meta skills.
Thank you very much, Grant. So yeah, I'm also one of the new product development managers on the NextGen team, and I joined SQA in May this year, coming from the college sector. So I'm just going to share with you some information on meta skills this afternoon on this one slide. And I fully appreciate this area will resonate with, if not all of you, many of you, regarding meta skills, an area where we've been in the college sector frequently asked from employers and providers, can we see more evidence of these? And that's the big part that we want to ensure with the NextGen qualifications. They are being developed with meta skills central to their core content. And I'll just give a little bit of a background, because that term meta skills may be a little different to what people have been used to. We often talk about transferable life skills and also lifelong learning skills for the learners, and the learners' personal development are key to this as well. So quick background on this slide here. The Scottish Government published their Future Skills Action Plan, and they tasked SQA and Skills Development Scotland and the Scottish Funding Council developing and promote a clear definition of meta skills, and to begin to embed them within the education and skills system and in support for our future workforce, going back to what Val mentioned right at the beginning about our learners being able to thrive in the 21st century workplace and develop lifelong skills. So a little bit on the definition, not the whole definition, there's a website link there on the slide, but I just wanted to pick up some of the areas here on the definition. These skills are not just to help us cope in this environment of ongoing change, they are skills to excel, to collaborate and empathise with others, and to create our own futures. And that's why we've termed these for the future meta skills, and define them as timeless, higher order skills that create adaptive learners and promote success in whatever context the future brings. So that's just a little snapshot from that definition, and those 3 domains: self-management, social intelligence, innovation. And what we see underneath that is again just a summary of what we're talking about with meta skills. We go into that website link, and we've actually got some SQA Academy resources currently being developed on this too. There is more added to that. That's just it's all we could fit in the one slide, to be honest, this afternoon. So the inclusion of meta skills is designed to complement the industry and sector specific content on the NextGen HN qualifications, and provide a framework for learners to undertake development aligned, and this is a bit that's really close to my heart, to professional practices and behaviours as well as personal aims. So we talk about it'll become second nature to them once they're out in the workforce, that they've developed these skills and exactly what employers and the providers are highly sought. And it's not to say that we've not delivered these before. I think the biggest challenge is how we're evidencing these and that framework, and this is where NextGen comes in. And what we've got here on the slide is just to give you some ideas. And what I wanted to focus on a little bit, just to finish off this afternoon on this slide, is that the current pilot delivery TV, how they're embedding meta skills throughout the delivery, and they're using project base. And we're giving some ownership to the learners themselves to monitor. They'll know their strengths, the challenges, areas they want to specialise in, perhaps further on in the industry, and focus areas of meta skills that they need to enhance. And one example is reflective journals of how they evidence that. And then when they come to interview and entering the workforce, the evidence is there right in front of them, and they can share those communication skills that they've developed throughout. So I will just finish up by mentioning, and I know our colleague Grant is going to mention them a little bit later on too, that SQA are in the process of developing some resources to support the delivery of meta skills. I'll hand over now to Jane for grading.
Have we lost Jane, or is it just me, my sound that's gone down?
Oh,
No, I can't.
oh, so I did it. I did the rookie error. I did the talking with my mute on. I'm so sorry, everybody. Thank you, Val.
No, you did that to
so
make
much.
me feel better about my alerts pinging in the background.
Well,
I was speaking, so
hopefully-
thank you for making me feel better, Jane.
We've been doing so well. Oh, drat. Well, hopefully that's going to relax everybody. So I was just introducing myself, and I was saying I'm Jane Henderson. I'm another of the new product development managers in the NextGen team. I'm the one that forgets to take our mute off when we're in important meetings. And it's really nice to see some names in the participant list that I recognise, and hopefully some people will remember me from a previous role in SQA doing quality enhancement with systems. So it's my job today to share with you some of the changes that are coming along to do with grading. And thanks to Grant for trailing this in a previous slide. It's probably going to feel like quite a big change. For those of you who are running current HNCs, the graded unit is now a very well established part of our HNCs. However, there has been a lot of thinking and research and engagement and feedback, which has led us along a journey towards looking, instead of it a single graded unit, to be looking at whole qualification grading. And just to give you a wee bit of background, put some flesh on those bones, what was that feedback telling us about why a change is probably a good thing? So feedback around the current single graded unit came from a variety of sources, and some of the messages were that a huge amount of both learner and lecturer time gets devoted to that graded unit, because everybody wants to come out with the best possible grade, quite understandably, but that this focus on one unit in the whole HNC framework can have the effect of lessening motivation from learners for other units, which are restricted or capped at being a pass or a fail, and that's not always a good thing because there's really important learning in those units. There was also feedback that the focus detracted from high quality learning across the course as a whole. So again, that focus on the graded unit because of its significance. And I think it's quite important as well to share that learners fed back to us that their performance in this one graded unit, they didn't feel that it always reflected their full achievements over the course. So they felt that not all of their achievements were necessarily being recognised in their A, B or C for their graded unit. So that's some of the kind of thinking behind why we're changing from a single graded unit to whole qualification grading. So what has been happening so far is that the subjects that we've shared with you that have been developed in year 1 of phase 1, so that's computing and engineering and TV, those teams spent a lot of time and hard work thinking about what's our grading model going to be. They were given carte blanche to think, how do we develop a whole qualification grading process? And that's exactly what they did. So we now have 3 prototype models, and they are prototypes. They're not complete because they won't be complete until they've been tested through pilot delivery. But the subsequent developments in phase 2 are choosing one of those 3 prototype models, and they will in turn be tested through being actually delivered through pilot delivery. So it's all subject to further change and refinement as further teams develop further subjects and further pilot delivery happens. And so we do expect that there will be tweaks and changes to the grading models that have been developed. However, the models are the result of a lot of kind of thinking, and that broad decision to move towards whole qualification grading rather than a single graded unit, that's a real strength of our thinking around NextGen. Another thing to tell you is that candidates are going to be graded as having achieved with merit, or achieved with distinction. So as well as the move away from a single graded unit, it's no longer an A, B or C, but it's achieved with merit, and achieved with distinction. And we have developed what we're calling grading narratives, which describe that level of attainment from learners achieved or achieved with merit, or a very few probably will achieve with distinction. And the reason behind that is to give learners and stakeholders in further education or employers a fuller understanding of what coming out with that achieved or with merit or with distinction, what that actually means, what it looks like. Our A, Bs or Cs are shorthand, but we wanted to improve the communication of what that grade meant for those exiting the qualification. So a wee bit of a whistle-stop tour there about one of the kind of significant changes, and I hope that's been helpful for you. Really keen for you to put any comments or questions into the chat. We will respond to these. If we can't do it right now, we'll gather up questions, and we will be in touch with you after the end of the webinar. But that's my section. Thank you. And Jordan, if you're able to move on to the next slide, I'll hand over to our other grant.
Thank you, Jane. So I'm Grant Anderson, one of the new product development managers within the NextGen HN team. For those of you that don't know me, my name might be recognised by some of you from some work I've been doing in the SQA ETP forum. So today's session has really been a bit of an introduction to the key components of our NextGen HN project. And we hope that obviously that's useful to you, and you find out as much information from today as you can. Moving forward from today's session, we will be looking to host some further webinar sessions. We're scheduling webinar sessions into 2022. Can't believe we're now at 2022. However, we are. So we're planning a series of further webinars, which will give a deeper dive into some of the component parts of the NextGen project. So those topics are listed on the slide here. So we have meta skills, we have articulation and progression, grading models, quality assurance, learning for sustainability, and pilot reflection. So we're really keen to gauge from yourselves today what aspects or what topics that are listed here you would actually be interested in, and would be keen to attend sessions on, just to find out a little bit more information. So there is a poll which Rachel has kindly put onto the screen for everyone. If everyone would kindly fill that in, and we can have an awkward silence. Well, I'll let you guys do that. It'll just give us a little bit of information in terms of what areas you would like to find out a little bit more on, which would be very helpful for us. So thanks very much for everyone putting their suggestions in there. Looks like meta skills is very popular. Maybe that's just because it was Julie who was presenting on meta skills. I don't know. Another thing I would like to draw your attention to, just while everyone is putting some comments in there, is SQA Academy and the fact that we are producing some additional support materials. And we do already have an SQA Academy course on there, which is what is NextGen HN. So there's a link on the slides here to that course. So we are actually in the process of producing some further courses. We will be producing some courses on meta skills, and in addition to that, on grading as well, which will just be sort of further information on both of those component parts of our NextGen project. So there will be some further information come out as we move along the project phase, to give you some further information on some courses which have got some interactive elements that you can take part in to try and find out a little bit more. I know that we've input, or you guys have input today into some of the topics that you would be keen to come along to sessions on in the future, but we're also keen to find out if there are any topics that you think we've maybe missed, anything in addition to those that you think that we could add to that we could take away and consider. It would be very, very useful to find out if there's something that you guys would like to find out a little bit more information on. That would be very helpful. So if we could maybe move on to the next slide, Jordan, please. So this is our final slide, but just as important as the rest. And we do have contact information within these slides as well. So we do have an email address in here. So if you guys do want to forward on any questions after the event, then feel free. We will try and get back to you. We do have a website as well on SQA. So we've got sqa.org.uk/NextGen, which is really a page that we have dedicated to the NextGen project, which will give you as much information on there about how we're progressing, which is useful. In terms of the email address, there's obviously that email address if you find in the future that you're struggling to access maybe some of the SQA Academy courses, then we can try and help you out. But those contact details are there for you. And really this draws our presentation stage to a close. So what we can do is just stop the recording at this stage.